I found out last night that I would be kind of helping out running this thing up front, so that's been fun. But I'm thrilled to get a chance to do it. I have a slightly different style of presenting. Most of my audiences are slightly younger. I do a lot of growth hacking, a lot of presentations at different schools. But I'm representing Valuer today. Valuer won Best Newcomer from the Danish Startup Awards. Basically, we connect early, bright, wonderful startups with large corporations and innovators like yourselves. And the idea is that we use a mixture of crowdsourcing and traditional methods to source startups, and then we use AI to basically vet them out. Will this be a successful investment? So that's the idea. So a little bit about me. I am the CMO of Valuer. I've co-founded 5 different startups back in the States, 2 others out here. I have 11 years of experience within kind of the startup scene and about the same amount for digital marketing. I've published a few marketing ebooks. I've consulted on SEO and SEM for 4+ years. It's a passion of mine. I consider myself a mentor, startup junkie, technical marketer, and a growth hacker. As I said before, my audience is definitely a lot younger, and so you'll see that the slides kind of play that way, but hopefully I keep it fun and interesting. So table of contents, I'm not going to make you guys read that, but just be aware that there's lots to cover, and I'm going to make sure that I hit all the points. So that's the concept. So the fun slide, fun fact about me, I was actually on a reality show about a year ago. It was called House Hunters International. It was about me moving to Denmark. Somebody randomly passed information along to me, and it was a ton of fun. So yeah, if you want to look it up, feel free. So my goal for today, my goal is to provide value. It's one of those things, back in the DC area, I spent a good 2 or 3 years attending a lot of events. I look at it like free education. And I was so miserable when I would come to an event where people hadn't prepped and put together slides and had figured out kind of how to reach their audience. So my goal for today is to provide a lot of examples and also hopefully be able to give you something in the way of a takeaway. So, why are you here? I think that's one of those interesting things that I don't tend to get the chance to talk to everybody. So I'm curious, how many of you are currently working with startups already? All right, a few. Very interesting. How many of you run innovation labs or are connected to it inside of your organization? Also a few. Okay, cool. And how many of you at some point or another were entrepreneurs or are currently entrepreneurs? Nice. Okay, cool. It's always good to kind of get a feel for the room, and it kind of tells me what I should be focusing on. So innovation for me is doing the work. I think there's a big difference between theoretical, and sometimes that's in the world of academia, versus the experience. And there's a lot of metaphors for this, right? So like one of my favorites is go up to an auto body shop. Your car's not working right. And you're subjected to 2 different mechanics. One has read a lot of books over the last 4 or 5 years about being a mechanic. The other has dirt under their fingernails, and over the last 4 or 5 years, they've been tinkering and working on cars. Which one do you choose, right? Think about this, maybe a pilot, maybe somebody that's doing heart surgery. I choose the person that actually has experience. And I think that's important to keep in mind when you're doing innovation. So I've always said when I'm doing these larger presentations, especially at like KU, Talent Garden, Copenhagen Business School, a lot of people get overwhelmed because there's a lot to learn in marketing, and I feel like innovation is no different. The idea is marketing is just kind of interconnected systems. If you get really good at understanding one system, you can apply it to all the others, or at least understand how to get into the next. So the idea is if you understand how to do really good content, you can then use that to understand PR, SEO, social media, amplification, all the other things that kind of go into this marketing sphere. And I think innovation is kind of the same. It's the idea of if you become an expert in one industry internally, you can start to figure out how to solve problems in that way and apply it to others. Innovation can often be a matter of perspective. So one of my examples that I find fascinating is this guy, John Crowley. John Crowley spent 20 years in finance, and basically shortly after his daughter was born, he was told that she basically had a terminal illness that would basically end her life in the next few years. So basically, he decided to quit his job in finance, and he started looking up researchers all around the world. He started his own company. It was called Novozymes Pharmaceuticals, and basically pulled all of these great minds together and said, I got a problem, how can we fix it? He used his experience in finance to basically manage, and within a few years came up with a cure. And by the way, he also sold the company for $137.5 million. Not bad. So I think this is kind of one of those fun things. My background is psychology. I had originally planned on doing a doctorate, and a long story for another day. But I think one of the more interesting classes that I ever got a chance to work with was organizational psychology. And the idea is that engineers tend to do their best when they're limited. If you provide limitations and basically remove options, this is when these people get the most creative. So for the gift that's there, tell these people you can't use big heavy machinery to start building a foundation. All of a sudden, you find a way. Tools replace manual processes. You have to do more with less, and this is often the case of the engineer. So we all recognize this guy, right? So the concept is he tells his engineers, build me a phone with a camera the size of a wallet with no buttons that also has U2's album on it. I don't get the last one, but I think it's fascinating. And I'm going to try to jump out of this slideshow real quick because I think there's a fun moment. If you remember back to 2007, and I'm hoping the audio will work, people hadn't actually experienced the way that iPhones worked before. Oh, no, no audio? Nope, okay. Well, there's this fascinating moment inside of that video where people get to see somebody swipe on the phone for the first time, and the audience lights up. There's people in the back going, whoa, you know, clapping up a storm because Steve Jobs did this on a phone. That's crazy, but that wasn't that long ago. This is 2007, and here we are in 2019. You know, some of the best results come from optimization and efficiency, and I think that's incredibly important to think about when you're trying to optimize your own processes and also look at the perspective of how can I work with my engineers. So another company that I'm a big fan of, Elon Musk. I told you I'd keep it fun. So Elon Musk basically tasked his engineers with build me a cheaper rocket, make it reusable, and scale it to carry bigger payloads. And the concept is it worked. This was a revolutionary concept. No private individual could afford to potentially do this. And obviously, we have examples of this panning out. By the way, the company wasn't worth $21.5 billion 15 years ago. This is a recent development. Pretty crazy. Something that doesn't involve engineers that I think is a real fascinating look at kind of the state of affairs is a company called WeWork. Has anybody heard of WeWork? Yeah, cool. One of the biggest unicorns out there. Basically, they do office space. That's it. So the idea is they basically said, only procure basically office, like large office spaces in the biggest metropolitan cities, make it cheaper than a regular office rent would be, don't require long-term leases. We're talking month to month. Rent out individual seats and make renting office space sexy. That's really hard to do. The concept is that this is a marketing play. So WeWork was recently valued at $47 billion. One of their competitors is called Regus. Regus has been around for a real long time. They do the exact same thing. The concept here is kind of funky. WeWork only owns 10 million square meters. Regus owns 45 million square meters, and recently was valued somewhere around $4 billion. The idea is Regus actually owns more of their stuff, whereas WeWork is just renting it out. And the concept is the only way that they got to this valuation, the only way they've scaled, is really good marketing. Their website is super sexy and cool. They make being in this office a community, an experience, versus just a transaction. Something to consider. The last one I'll go over is kind of fun. I think the concept of autonomous vehicles is going to change monumentally over the next coming 5 to 10 years. The idea was when Uber first set out, they said, let's make it cheaper than a cab using existing infrastructure and hopefully someday self-driving. Users can potentially complete other tasks while driving. So we're talking mobile pharmacy, mobile doctor, mobile entertainment center, mobile movie theater, mobile everything. And that's coming. And the idea is they want to be at the forefront of that. And IKEA is trying to get there as well. And this is the concept of taking what is essentially a situation and optimizing it, or making it more interesting with a radical solution. So one of my favorite quotes that I tend to try to put out to my team is a quote from Clarke's 3 Laws. The underlined part is my favorite part. When he states that something is impossible, he is very probably wrong. The only way of discovering the limits of the possible is to venture a little way past them into the impossible. Any sufficient advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And the idea when Steve Jobs swiped that iPhone up, that was magic for some people. Crazy. So I think the concept here is making something better. And this obviously doesn't necessarily have to be humanity changing. It's basically improving your business should be inspired in just the same way that Steve Jobs felt inspired to do this. And people felt it. So I'm just trying to say innovate towards greatness. So how do we get there? I think any given path has its own challenges. Many opportunities have ultimately the same destinations. The road to hell can be paved with good intentions, right? So I think innovation starts at the top. Having met with a lot of different innovators over the last year with Valuer, it's really interesting to hear kind of how these innovation labs get started. It consistently comes from the top. It's CEOs, CTOs, CIOs, CDOs. It's not going to be the lowly intern that says, you know what we should do? You know what we should think about? It doesn't work that way. You have to demand the change. You have to say, we are working in different processes now. And you have to be a part of the change. I've met a lot of really interesting CIOs that are basically saying, we want to do hackathons. How do we do hackathons? And I ask them why. And they're like, well, it's good marketing. I'm like, okay, cool. You need to be there. And they're like, well, yeah, I'll come for the first half hour and then I'll come back after 48 hours. That doesn't work. That's not how we do it. You need to be seen, you need to be present, you need to talk to the people. And that's a really difficult situation for a lot of higher ups because they deem that maybe to be not the type of work that they want to do. That's a different type of leader. I have JFK here, previous American president, that gave this really impassioned speech about going to the moon. Now, I'm not saying everybody here is necessarily building businesses that plan on going to the moon, but the idea is the passion was there. And that took a number of years for us to get there, but ultimately it panned out. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you want copies of the slides with some of the examples and links to the stories. I'm happy to do that. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much.